And they say it will never happen, but here it is. The 100-volt, 43 miles per hour capable 16-inch electric unicycle, the latest Inmotion wheel that represents a radical departure for what had previously been the most conservative EUC company.
This week, 5 things you should know about the Inmotion V12. And I take the show on the road by visiting DC and Philly for the Twin City group ride. Are you ready? Roll the intro.
Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and we'll be BFF forever.
Well, 2021 turned out a little bit different than I had expected in the beginning of the year. We had only had one wheel announcement as compared to the 5 we had from last year. There has been a slew of issues, like a huge uptick when it comes to shipping costs, as well as shortages when it comes to lithium batteries and chips. Now, I'm still hoping that we will eventually see a new wheel from Hsiang as well as Veteran. But let's focus on the task at hand, which is the fact that I finally was able to get my grub.
So I was saying that it took me a while, but I was finally able to borrow the prototype V12 from my friend EVX. And when you get a new toy, you ought to share. And since I heard that the DCE Skate group happened to be running their annual Twin City rides, I volunteered to bring the V12 down so everyone can have a go. Plus, I never done a group ride outside of New York City, so the chance to ride with all new people at 2 brand new cities that I barely know, of course.
In many ways, the Inmotion V12 was a wheel that is born of unusual circumstance. It was designed and engineered by a team who had to entirely rely on... I'm gonna try very hard to stay on topic. A little bit better. The part that we were in was entirely uninspired. Oh, this is cool. Look at that. What was I saying? By a team of Chinese engineers who had to entirely rely on secondhand input on exactly what sort of performance specification or even ride characteristic they have to design to. The beauty of having a portable electrical transport with you at all times. And I just tell you that this is absolutely awesome. I think I have some general sense of where I'm going. Let me try to be good and not run any lights. By that I meant very few Chinese people actually ride an electric unicycle, and even fewer still would push it to the degree extreme rider in the West would. And I can say with a good amount of certainty that none of the engineer at Inmotion would do anything like what we would do here.
Wanting some extra time to explore DC, I arrived the night before, dropped my stuff off at the hotel, and promptly went off wandering randomly around the heart of downtown looking for sights and some good food.
Is that the White House?
Yeah, that way.
That way and to the park. Okay, thank you. Good morning. Well, it's time to look for breakfast. So Inmotion took the unusual step of sending out pre-production demo units to YouTubers all around the world for them to provide feedback on every single little aspect of this wheel.
I love good food in unusual spots, and the church cafeteria turns out to be the perfect breakfast joint.
I hope you don't mind me stuffing my face while I'm doing this. But even before the V12 existed in its present form, the genesis of this wheel was very much inspired by the extreme riding video that has been propagating through YouTube and other social media. Oh man, that is the best pancake I ever had. Oh man, oh my god, oh my god.
Which brings us to point number 1, which is that the V12 is the fastest electric unicycle that Inmotion has ever produced. It is their very first 100-volt EUC, what was previously the sole province of high-performance EUC manufacturers like Gotway or Veteran. And for a very long time, the expectation had always been that if you want performance and 100-volt, certain sacrifices when it comes to build quality or design was unavoidable, since higher touch companies like Inmotion or Hsiang refused to enter the high performance, and by that I mean fast, EUC market due to some vague concern about safety, which I never really understand. What's the difference between riding at, I don't know, 60 versus 50 kilometer per hour? Again, I think it's because that the design team and the people who work at these companies that make our EUCs really never ride the wheels the way their customer does.
And although you still see some lingering reservation when it comes to speed and safety, there is a little doubt as to the dramatic shift that Inmotion have taken with this wheel. This is a true 100-volt wheel with all the accompanying boost when it comes to performance that you would expect. This is the wheel that can get you into a whole lot of trouble very quickly, and I meant that in the best way possible. The fact that this is a 16-inch wheels means that it's both more nimble as well as torquier. Smithsonian. Oh, it is open. As compared to an 18-inch wheel with similarly sized motor and power output. As soon as you lean in, there's immediate sense of power and acceleration, and braking is similarly responsive. I also love the sound that they added to the motor. It is entirely optional, and you can theoretically turn it off. However, I think it's both helpful in providing some warning to pedestrians as to your presence. Helpful when you're riding in a busy area like this. And it also provides excellent audio cue as to how fast you're actually going. But I'm sure at this point you're probably wondering exactly how fast does the Inmotion V12 actually goes. Which brings us to point number 2.
Maxed out, this is a 40 miles per hour wheel. Now the V12 is advertised as a 43 miles per hour wheel, but the alarm sounds at 38 and the pushback engage at 40, and my policy is generally to never ride the warning, and so far I had not exceeded those limitations just yet, and I'm not quite sure if I should suggest that you do either. See, the unfortunate downside of that 16-inch wheel is the general lesser stability at high speed. Smaller diameter wheels will exhibit lesser gyro stability at speed and be more easily spooked, and by that I mean induced to wobble by either road conditions or rider inputs. So you'll get wobble when you hit a pothole, wobble when you emergency brake, and wobble if your dog sneezes. The caveat is that this all depends on the kind of road you're dealing with the DC ride being an excellent example of optimal surface condition. The V12 felt solid the entire time, but back home in New York City where craters are the rules, not the exception, not so much.
I got 15 minutes to catch the train. I hope that should be enough. Thing may be painfully obvious, but I think it's important to say this is not the V11. The electric unicycle niche went through a truly explosive growth last year. I gotta figure out where I'm going. That looks like the right direction. And I think for a lot of people, the Inmotion V11 wasn't just their very first Inmotion, but rather their very first electric unicycle altogether. And the thing you have to realize is that, like, let's say shoes, the electric unicycle also comes in a great varieties of wheel size and configurations with dramatically different ride qualities and performances. Very empty town. Despite its name, the V12 was never meant to be a sequel of the V11. From a ride quality perspective, you probably couldn't even find two wheels that is more different from one another than the V12 as compared to the V11. The V12 is smooth, well-mannered, and likely one of the most comfortable wheel that you can ride, either standing or seated. The V12, on the other hand, is responsive, wild, and a little bit fidgety, and when you push it to the limit of its speed envelope. But strangely, I'm also going to tell you that the V12 is likely one of the most reasonable beginner electric unicycle available right now. The lack of stability is mostly an issue at higher speed, which is not something you should be doing as a beginner anyway. But the added agility and maneuverability you get from the 16-inch wheel is a huge asset when it comes to learning how to ride an EUC. Furthermore, the 3-inch wide tire gives you a slightly wider contact patch, which adds to the stability at low speed. My general recommendation is still to go with a used wheel, where you won't feel as bad if you drop it doing practice. But if you feel strongly about getting shiny new toy to get your toes wet, then the V12 is actually a really good choice. I don't know what this area is. We're on the northeastern side of Philadelphia, a very industrial looking area. Speaking of sexy, we come to point 4, and that is polish. When it comes to premium design and amenity, there's no other EUC manufacturer who can match Inmotion. You'll find better fit and finishes and little conveniences like the kickstand, and of course this awesome color touchscreen, which allow you to access most functions from the wheel itself rather than having to rely on an app on your smartphone.
The headlight is decent. Unfortunately, the excellent version from the V11 did not make it onto the V12, but you do get the decorative side LEDs and the speakers, so for those of whom missed those features on the V11, you got your wish. The V12 is also IP5 rated, so splash proof. With the battery in their own separate waterproof compartment, I've yet to ride it in the rain, but from what Make had told me, he had ridden this wheel in the wet multiple times and had no issues with it. As for the trolley handle,
unfortunately I have the prototype, which doesn't have a finalized trolley handle, so it doesn't lock. It's a little bit annoying. I can see that the geometry of it works okay, and once they fix it, it'll probably be just fine. But it isn't all flower and roses, and here's the bit that none of the other YouTubers likely talked about, and partially the reason why I am no longer on the list of guys that Inmotion sends wheels to, which is point 5. Caveat. If you've been on any online Inmotion chat or forum, you likely seen the volumes of complaints people had with the V11's rusted bearing, unexpected cutout, or even simply just the difficulties with maintaining or swapping tube on that wheel. And of course, much grumbling about the lack of response from Inmotion, all of which unfortunately no longer feels like isolated incidents. I did experience some problem with this wheel, keep in mind that it's a pre-production model, but I figure it's only fair that I mentioned it. There were some decent oscillation at 38 miles per hour, but I did have a crash earlier in the day, so that may be part of the reason. Then a few days later, the firmware got stuck in a loop when I tried to update to the latest version, and it took a hard reset to bring the wheel back. Finally, when one of the riders here in New York tried to torque it, it didn't really like that. Oh, shit. Jesus Christ, man. Again. I have to go ruin it for you. And decided to roll over and die. I took it partially apart, which was not an easy task, and then still waiting for Inmotion to help me find a fix. So as much as I enjoyed the V12 in the 2 weeks I had with it, there is a but.
What it is.
So what do you think about the V12? Is the boat experiment from Inmotion a hit, or is it still not fast or powerful enough to fill that hole in your heart meant for the veteran Sherman? Well, that is what the comment section is for. And you know what? Aha! I somehow managed to trick you once again to wasting another 15 minutes of your life, but I hope you enjoyed it. Shout out to my supporter on Patreon. Please check out the link in the video description below if you enjoy and like to support my work. And as always, as much as we all love electric unicycle, the only way for us to get better wheel is to grow as a community. So tell your friend, teach them how to ride and get them hooked. Until the next video, thank you.